Okay, welcome in one and all. I'm now going to review all of Saturday's 15 games from the NHL schedule. The first game took place an early afternoon game between the Nashville Predators and the Edmonton Oilers. The Predators were victorious in this one. Obviously, got a bit of revenge after the Oilers beat them earlier in the season. 5-2 was the final score. Take a looking at the scoring summary. So Darnell Nurse would kick things off with a power play goal about halfway into the first, so it was looking good at the start, assisted by Ekholm and Ryan McLeod. Philip Forsberg would then tie things up about 25 seconds after that, and even strength goal from Ryan O'Reilly and Del Gazzo. So all tied up at one after one. Ryan O'Reilly, who would go on to have a massive game in this one, would then kick things off in the second period, giving the Predators a 2-1 lead, just over 20 seconds into that frame, and even strength goal from Forsberg and Carrier. He would then double up the lead to 3-1 about 3 minutes later, and a power play goal from Philip Forsberg and Novak. Zach Hyman would then get a power play goal for the Oilers about a minute and a half after that, to decrease the lead to 3-2 from Bouchard and McDavid. Tommy Novak would then increase the lead to 4-2 at that point, and even strength goal from Evangelista and Ryan Josi, I should say, with just under 5 minutes to go in the second. So it was 4-2 after two. The lone goal in the third was from Ryan O'Reilly, who would get a hat trick in this one, just over 8 minutes into the frame, assisted by Nyquist and Carrier. So 5-2 is the final score. So with that, the Predators are now sitting at 5-6-0, while the Oilers are really struggling. They are now, after 10 games, sitting at 2-7-1. The next matchup takes place in the desert, of all places, where we have the host Arizona Coyotes, and they were taking on the Winnipeg Jets. So I'll just get the teams loaded up on the screen. I find that the 24 or NHL 24 just takes forever just to load teams, whereas 23 you can just fly by. That's just my personal opinion. Alrighty, so I can adjust this a little bit. I do apologize, the screen is going to be a little hazy, but unfortunately there's nothing I can do at this moment. So in this matchup, the Winnipeg Jets were victorious. 5-3 was the final score. Take a look at the goal summary. So in the first, just over about 5.5 minutes into the frame, J.J. Moser would kick things off for the Coyotes, and an even strength goal from Michelli and Krause, so it's 1-0 after one. Liam O'Brien would then double up the lead to 2-0, assisted by McBain. Roughly just over 14 minutes left in the second period. Nino Niederreiter would then cut the lead to 2-1. Less than 2 minutes after that, an even strength goal from Appleton and Josh Morrissey. Brendan Dillon would then tie things up, an even strength goal, but halfway into that frame from Namistenkov and Perfetti. Lawson Krause would then give the Coyotes the lead yet again, a power play goal with just over 5 minutes to go in the frame, assisted by Bjustad, and then Nino Niederreiter will get his second goal of the game on the power play with just about 3 minutes left in that period from Ehlers and Pionk. So it was all tied up at 3 after 2. Brendan Dillon would then get the Jets a 4-3 lead, just over 3 minutes into the frame, and an even strength goal from Appleton and Lowry. The Nino Niederreiter would then complete the hat trick just over 7 minutes into the period, and an even strength goal from Lowry and Dillon. So 5-3 was the final score. With the victory, the Jets are now back above 500, sitting at 5-4-2. And with the loss, the Coyotes are back to 500, 5-5-1 is where they stand so far on the season. Take a look at the next game, which happens to be in Michigan. We have two Original Six franchises who took to the ice in Detroit. The Boston Bruins and the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings would prevail. 5-4 would be the final score. So a massive victory for a team that is, how do you put it, playing extremely well. Just 1 second. There we go. So in the first, James Van Riemsdyk would kick things off. About sort of 5 minutes into the frame, an even strength goal from Pasternak and Zacha. Matthew Portress, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, would then increase the lead to 2-0 for the Bruins. An even strength goal from Shattenkirk and Van Riemsdyk about 9.5 minutes into the frame. Lucas Raymond with a power play goal to cut the deficit to 2-1 from Perron and Larkin. That happened just under 4 minutes left in the frame. So it was 2-1 for the Bruins after one period of play. In the second, roughly halfway into the period, Jake Wallman would tie things up on the power play, assisted by Sider and Sprong. Charlie Coyle would then score about 3.5 minutes after that to increase the lead to 3-2 for the Bruins, and an even strength goal from DeBrusque and Wotherspoon. So it was 3-2 for the Bruins after the second period. Dylan Larkin would then tie things up for the Red Wings, roughly 7 minutes into the frame. An even strength goal from Raymond and DeBrincat. David Perron would then give the Red Wings the first lead of the game, roughly 9 minutes into the period. An even strength goal from Comfort and Petrie. Andrew Kopp would then increase the lead to 5-3. I want to say roughly a minute and a half after that, almost 2 minutes after Perron gave them the lead. An even strength goal from Comfort and Perron. So it was 5-3 at that point. Pasternak would then cut the deficit to 5-4 with just over 5 minutes left in the game. Power play goal from Portress and Lindholm, but unfortunately it was too little too late at that point. So 5-4 is the final score from Detroit. Taking a look at the record, the Red Wings are now sitting at 7-4-1, and even though the Bruins lost, they're still dominating. They're sitting at 9-1-1. The next matchup takes place in Ontario, where we have the home team, or the host team, I should say, the Ottawa Senators, and they were taking on a team from the Atlantic Division in the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm just going to pull up the team's logos here momentarily. I swear, I've said this before, but it feels like the 24 just takes forever to load teams up. Anyways, that's my little rant. So in the matchup, you see on your screen, the Lightning would prevail in this one. Final score would be 6-4. Taking a look at the goal summary. So Brady Tkachuk, the captain of the Sens, would kick things off in the first, about 13 minutes into that period. An even strength goal from Joseph and Sanderson. Victor Hedman would then score with just under 3 minutes left in that period. And an even strength goal from Kucherov and Point. So it was all tied up at 1 after the first. Braden Point would then give the Lightning their first lead of the game, 2-1 at that point. Just about 30 seconds into the period, assisted by Kucherov, an even strength goal. Michael Eyssimont would then score roughly 5 minutes into the period to increase the lead to 3-1, an even strength goal from Cirelli. Braden Point would then get his second goal of the game with just under 2 minutes left in the second to increase the lead to 4-1, an even strength goal from Kucherov. So it was 4-1 for the Lightning after 2. Claude Giroux would cut the deficit in half to 4-2 in the third, just over a minute into that frame, assisted by Stützle and Bernard Docker. Braden Point would then get a hat trick, which seems to be very common nowadays. A power play goal roughly halfway into that third frame, assisted by Stamkos and Kucherov, so they increased their lead to 5-2 at that point. Brady Tkachuk will get his second goal of the game on the power play with just under 9 minutes to go in the frame, assisted by Josh Norris. Nikita Kucherov would then increase the lead to 6-3 with just under 9 minutes to go in the frame. An even strength goal from Bear Bullitt and Victor Hedman. Drake Batherson would then score less than a minute after that to decrease the lead to 6-4. An even strength goal from Brady Tkachuk and Sanderson. But unfortunately, that's all Ottawa was able to muster. So 6-4 is the final score. Tampa Bay are now sitting at 5-3-3. And with the loss, the Ottawa Senators are sitting at 4-6-0. Take a look at the next matchup, which also takes place in Ontario. We have the host, Toronto Maple Leafs, and they were playing host to another team from the Atlantic we're quite familiar with in the Buffalo Sabres. Here we go. The team's logo should appear on your screen. So the Sabres would actually become victorious in this particular matchup. A very high scoring affair, just like the other game. 6-4 was the final score. So Mitch Marner would kick things off for the Leafs, just under 8 minutes to go in the frame. Even strength goal from Yarncroke and Morgan Riley. JJ Peterka would then get a power play goal for the Sabres with less than 4 minutes to go in the frame, assisted by Owen Power and Victor Olofsson, if I'm not correct. So it was all tied up at 1 after the first. Tage Thompson would then strip Marner in the second period, shorthanded, get a goal, no assist on the play to give the Sabres a 2-1 lead. And then with just over 5 minutes after that, on another power play, Austin Matthews would then tie things up for Nylander and Marner. And then less than 30 seconds after that, or just over 30 seconds after that, Jeff Skinner would then increase the lead to 3-2 for the Sabres, assisted by Johnson. So it was 3-2 for the Sabres after 2 periods of play. Austin Matthews would once again tie things up, getting his second goal of the game, assisted by Marner over 17 seconds into the period. Jordan Greenway would then give the Sabres another lead in this one, 4-3, an even strength goal from Middlestat and Peterka. And then big surprise, Austin Matthews, yet another hat trick, would tie things up with about 7.5 minutes into the period, and an even strength goal from Giordano and Mitch Marner. With just over 7 minutes to go in the frame, Alex Tuch would then give the Sabres yet another lead in this contest, 5-4, assisted by Dahlin and Clifton, and then Alex Tuch would then put the game on ice with just over a minute to go, an empty netter, so 6-4 was the final score. With the victory, the Sabres are now sitting back at 500 at 6-6-0, and with the loss, the Leafs, they're still above 500, but it's very close. 5-4-2 are where the Leafs stand after this one. The next matchup takes place, I believe, south of the border and in the nation's capital for the States. That would be Washington, as we have the host Team Capitals, and they were taking on the Columbus Blue Jackets. So should be able to... Oh, wrong team, sorry. Come on. It's doing so good, too. Alrighty, here we go. Again, it's going to be extremely blurry, but it is what it is, unfortunately. So the Capitals would get a victory in this one, a low-scoring affair this time. 2-1 would be the final from Washington. Tom Wilson will kick things off in the first, just under 8 minutes to go. No assist, just an even-strength goal. Sonny Milano would then increase the lead 5 minutes exactly after that, assisted by Jensen and Sandin. And in the second period, so it was 2-0 after the first. In the second, the lone goal came from the Blue Jackets just under 2 minutes into that frame. Dmitry Vorokonov, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, assisted by Marchenko and Jirasek. And there were no other goals to report after that. So 2-1 was the final score. With the victory, the Washington Capitals are now sitting at 5-4-1. And with the loss, the Blue Jackets are back below 500, sitting at 4-5-2. The next matchup, I believe, takes place... Where are we? My phone could cooperate here. Come on. Tell you what, while this is loading or while it's doing something funky, I will load up the teams that I'm going to be talking about. So the host Philadelphia Flyers took on the Los Angeles Kings. Come on. Let's go. I think I might honestly just go back to the 23. It did take so long just to flip through teams. Alrighty. Come on. Goodness. Scrolling. People always scrolling. Come on. Let's go. Almost there. Keep going. Come on. Just a little further. Oh my gosh. Can I just click on this matchup now? Oh my gosh. Come on. Holy, this is driving me nuts. Where are we? This phone's all over the place. Can't make up its mind. Okay. So the Kings would prevail in this matchup, getting a shutout in the contest. 5-0 was the final score. As long as this phone can cooperate, I'll be able to review the goal scoring summary. Come on. I mean, it's 2023. You think, you'd have high-speed internet, your phone wouldn't be laggy, but unfortunately... All right, here we go. So Adrian Kempe would then kick things off with just over 5 minutes to go in the frame, assisted by Byfield and Garakov, even strength goal. Anze Kopitar would then double up the lead less than 20 seconds after that, assisted by Matt Roy and Byfield. So it was 2-0 for the Kings after 2. Arthur Kaliev would get a power play goal with roughly 4 minutes remaining in that period, assisted by Byfield and Trevor Moore. And speaking of Trevor Moore, he would score with less than 20 seconds to go in the second to increase the lead to 4-0, assisted by Kalivev. Blake Lizotte would then give the Kings a 5-0 cushion at that point, 6.5 minutes into the third. So 5-0 was the final score from Philly. With the victory, the Kings have now improved to 7-2-2, and with the loss, the Flyers have now fallen below 500, sitting at 5-6-1. Our next matchup takes place on Long Island, I do believe, and I stand correct. So I will load up the teams momentarily. So we have the host team in the New York Islanders, and they were taking on the Carolina Hurricanes. The Hurricanes would get victory in this one. It did go to overtime, so obviously both teams were able to secure at least 1 point. The Hurricanes getting the second point because obviously they won in the overtime frame. Noah Dobson would kick things off just on over 2 minutes remaining in the first, and an even strength goal from Barzal and Horvat. So it was 1-0 after one. Simon Holmstrom would get a shorthanded goal for the Islanders to increase the lead to 2-0, assisted by Pajot. Matt Barzal would then give the Islanders a 3-0 lead with just over 12 minutes remaining in the period. Even strength goal from Horvat and Polak. And then after that, the Islanders weren't able to get anything past that. So essentially, they blew a 3-0 lead. Jalen Chatfield would then score about 30 seconds after Barzal would score. He get an even strength goal from Martinook and Stahl, so it was 3-1 after 2 periods of play. Dmitry Orlov would then decrease the lead to 3-2 in the third, with just under 8 minutes to go. Kotkaniemi and Svechnikov. And then speaking of Kotkaniemi, he would score a power play goal with just under 5 minutes to go, assisted by Svechnikov. Try to say that name 5 times fast. So it was all tied up at 3. Sebastian Aho would be the hero in this game, giving the Hurricanes obviously a 4-3 win, and an even strength goal from Nichas and Shea just over a minute into the overtime frame. So with the victory, the Hurricanes are now sitting at 7-5-0, and with the loss, the Islanders are sitting at 5-2-3. I believe there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more games to report. I gotta flip my page and take a look and see if I can go back on the phone and double check the score. So the next matchup takes place in Illinois, where we have the Chicago Blackhawks, and they are playing host to the Florida Panthers. So momentarily, come on, almost there. There we are. So the team should be on your screen as we speak. So we'll take a look at the goal scoring summary. I believe the Blackhawks came away victorious, and they sure did. 5-2 was the final score. Nick Foligno would kick things off in the first. It was over 6.5 minutes into that period. A power play goal from Seth Jones and Corey Perry. Nikita Zaitsev would then increase the lead to 2-0 with just under 10 minutes into the frame. An even strength goal from Kurashev and Reichel. And then Taylor Hall would then increase the lead to 3-0 with 12 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock. Dickinson and Tyler Johnson, I do believe, assisted on the goal. So it was 3-0 after the first period of play. The lone goal in the second came from the Blackhawks. Connor Bedard would get an even strength goal 5.5 minutes into the frame, assisted by Kurashev and Tenorti. So it was 4-0 at that point. Oliver Ekman-Larsson would get the Panthers on the board in the third. A power play goal 6.5 minutes into the frame, assisted by Verhaeghe and Barkov. Matthew Tkachuk would then decrease the lead to 4-2 at that point with 12.5 minutes into the period, assisted by Verhaeghe and Mahura. And then Philip Kurashev would get an empty netter with 10 seconds remaining, assisted by Ryan Donato. So 5-2 was the final score from Chicago. So with the victory, the Blackhawks are now sitting at 4-6-0. And with the loss, the Panthers are still above 500. They're sitting at 5-4-1. The next matchup, I believe, takes place in the state of Minneapolis, where we have the home team, Minnesota Wild, and they were taking on the New York Rangers. So the team's logo should appear on the screen right away. Minnesota would get the victory in this one. It did go to a shootout, so obviously both teams were guaranteed a point. Minnesota obviously came away victorious, so they got the second point on top of that. So in the first 3.5 minutes in, Jimmy Vesey would kick things off, an even-strength goal from Pitlick and Lindgren. Terry Panarin would then increase the lead to 2-0 with roughly 6 minutes into that period, assisted by Trocheck and Lafreniere. Eric Gustafsson would then increase the lead to 3-0, less than a minute, or just over a minute after that, assisted by Wheeler and Cooley. So it was 3-0 for the Rangers after the first. Ryan Hartman would then decrease the lead to 3-1, roughly 6 minutes into the frame, assisted by Mermis and Zuccarello. Joel Eriksson Ek would then add another goal for the Wild, roughly 30 seconds after Hartman scored, to decrease the lead to 3-2 at that point, assisted by Faber and Foligno. So it was 3-2 for the Rangers heading into the third period. Zuccarello would finally tie things up less than 2 minutes into the frame, an even-strength goal from Broden and Johansson. Marco Rossi would then increase the lead 5 minutes and 20 seconds into the third, assisted by Kaprizov and Boldy. And then a minute and 20 seconds later, Chris Kreider, I've said that name several times throughout these videos, always seems to come up clutch for the Rangers, would tie things up, an even goal from Panarin and Gustafsson, so it was obviously all tied up heading into the overtime frame. There were no goals in the overtime. Matt Boldy would then give the Wild the win in the shootout. So 5-4 is the final score from Minnesota. With the victory, the Wild are now sitting at 4-5-2. And with the loss, the Rangers are still above 500 and still looking pretty decent, sitting at 5-2-3. Take a look at the next matchup. Which takes place in Missouri, where we have the host St. Louis Blues, and they're taking on the team that I cheer for, I guess, and the Montreal Canadiens. The Blues would get a huge victory, to say the least. I believe they doubled up on the Habs. 6-3 was the final score. Let's take a look at the goal scoring summary. Jordan Kyrou would kick things off with a minute and a half in the first, an even-strength goal from Brady Schenn. Yaroslav Slavkovsky would get a power play goal about 4 minutes into the frame to tie things up, assisted by Newhook and Gallagher. And then Robert Thomas would then score with just over 3.5 minutes remaining to give the Blues a 2-1 lead after the first. Brandon Saad in the second would increase the lead to 3-1 for the Blues, just under 7 minutes to go, assisted by Kyrou and Schenn, an even-strength goal at that. Brandon Gallagher would then decrease the lead to 3-2, scoring from Monahan with just over 5 minutes remaining in that second. And unfortunately, that's would be the end, or as close as the Habs would get. In the third period, the Blues absolutely took over. Alexei Torpachenko would get a shorthanded goal, and this has been a big problem for the Habs. They gave up, I think, 2 goals shorthanded to the Wild. It is very more common nowadays than it was before, but you can't be giving up shorthanded goals, especially when you have obviously an extra skater on the ice. So that would increase the lead to 4-2, assisted by Pavel Buchnevich, with just under 3 minutes into the frame. Braden Schenn would then increase the lead to 5-2, with almost 6 minutes into the period, assisted by Kyrou and Saad. Kasperi Kapanen would then increase the lead to 6-2, with 4 minutes to go exactly, assisted by Rob Thomas. Nick Suzuki would decrease the lead to 6-3, which is nice, but it was too little too late, because that happened with roughly a minute and a half to go, assisted by Caulfield and Matheson. So 6-3 is the final from St. Louis. So with that being said, the Blues are now sitting at 5-4-1, and with a loss, Montreal still above 500. But after this 3-game losing streak, they're now sitting at 5-4-2. All right, so there should only be a handful of games remaining to review. And yeah, there's 4 games left on the tab. So our next matchup takes place between 2 Pacific teams. The Seattle Kraken played host to the Calgary Flames. There, logo should appear on the screen. The Flames got a humongous victory after starting the season off extremely poor. 6-3 would be the final score. In the first, Oliver Bjorkstrand would get a power play goal roughly halfway into the period from Schultz and Gordy. Martin Pospisil would then tie things up about 6 minutes remaining in that first from Kadri on Duby. Eli Tovilen would then score with less than 4 minutes remaining in the first. An even strength goal from Gord and Shore. The lone goal in the second happened with Noah Hannafin, a power play goal with exactly a minute remaining in that period from Huberdeau and Zari. So it was all tied up at 2 heading into the third. Igor Sharangovich would score about a minute and a half into the period for the Flames to give them a 3-2 lead. An even strength goal from Zadorov and D. Simone. Michael Backlund, the captain, would score roughly 4 minutes into the period from Dewar and Greer, so to increase the lead to 4-2. Jaden Schwartz would then cut the lead to 4-3 with about a minute and a half remaining in that period, assisted by Bernier and Vince Dunn. And roughly 40 seconds after that, Michael Backlund would get an even strength goal, empty netter, and then Rasmus Anderson with 20 seconds remaining, empty netter, no assists on either of those goals. So 6-3 was the final score. With that, the Flames finally got their third win of the season. They were sitting at 3-7-1, and with the loss, the Kraken are sitting at 4-6-2. All right, the next matchup takes place in California, where we have one team that's beyond struggling, to say the least, and the other one isn't off to the best of starts, but we were able to get a win, so we'll see if they can get this momentum going. So the Pittsburgh Penguins were taking on the San Jose Sharks. There was two things that really stood out to me in this game. Obviously, this is Karlsson's first game back as a member of the Penguins since that big offseason trade with the three-team trade. And the other thing, too, is the Sharks are just, they look even worse than an AHL team. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't know what to say. This is the second time in a row they've given up double-digit goals. 10-2 it was the final score in this one. Riley Smith would get a power play goal to kick things off, a minute and a half into the first for the Penguins, assisted by Karlsson and Gensel. He would get his second goal of the game, roughly 7 minutes to go. An even strength goal from Pettersson and Russ. It was 2-0 after the first. Jake Gensel would then increase the lead to 3-0, 3.5 minutes into that second period from Rust and Joseph, an even strength goal. Vinny Hinostreva would then get a goal with no assists, 4.5 minutes into that second period, 4-0 for the Penguins at that point. Anthony Duclair would finally stop the bleeding 8.5 minutes into the period, a power play goal from Hurdle and McDonald. And then after that, the Penguins just kept rolling. Malkin would score 9 minutes into the period from Smith and Raquel. Chris Letang would then score about 25 seconds after that from Crosby and Rust to increase the lead to 6-1. Matt Nieto would then increase the lead to 7-1 with just over 8 minutes remaining in that period, assisted by Achari and Hinostrava. So it was 7-1 heading into the third period. Brian Rust would score 50 seconds into that third from Gensel and Karlsson. So it was 8-1 at that point. Jacob McDonald would get a power play goal for the Sharks 9 minutes and 20 seconds into that third from Hurdle and Duclair, 8-2. Evgeny Malkin would get a power play goal with just under 9 minutes to go in that period from Riley Smith and Rakel. And then Jake Gensel would score about 1 minute and 8 seconds after that. There were no assists. 10-2 was the final score. So a massive victory for the Penguins and an absolutely humiliating loss for the San Jose Sharks. With that win, Pittsburgh's now sitting at 4-6-0. And with the loss, I'm not kidding you, the Sharks are 0-10-1. Unreal. 2 more games to look at on Saturday's tap. So the first one takes place in BC, where we have the host Vancouver Canucks, and they were taking on the Dallas Stars. So the teams should be on the screen right away. 2-0 was the final score. So we kind of went from one extreme to having 12 goals in the game to just 2 goals in a game to cover. So the Canucks did prevail. 2-0 was the final score. Take a look at the goal scoring summary. It should be very quick. There were no goals in the first, just 2 goals to report in the second. Pius Suter would kick things off 4 minutes and 20 seconds into that period. An even strength goal from Joshua and Susi, and then Elias Pettersson would score with just over 4 minutes remaining in that second. An even strength goal from Hronek and Mikheyev. So 2-0 was the final from Vancouver. They are now sitting at 8-2-1. And even though the Stars lost, I apologize, they're still a pretty good team, if I want to be completely honest with you. 7-2-1 are where the Stars sit after this matchup. The last game on tap took place, in my opinion, between two of the better teams in the league. Again, not trying to disrespect Dallas. They're a very good team. But after watching this, I'm now thinking that maybe Dallas and the Vegas are the two best teams in the league. 7-0 was the final score in favor of the Golden Knights. There was just the one goal in the first. Mark Stone got a shorthanded goal with just over 3 minutes to go, assisted by McNabb and Stevenson. So it was 1-0 for the Golden Knights after one. Jack Eichel would increase the lead to 2-0, 9.5 minutes into that second period. An even strength goal from Marchessault and Pietrangelo. William Carrier would then score over 3 minutes after that to increase the lead to 3-0, assisted by Stone and Stevenson. And then Jack Eichel would get his second goal of the game, a power play goal at that, less than a minute after Carrier scored, to give the Golden Knights a 4-0 lead. Assists on that goal were from Stone and Theodore. So it was 4-0 heading into the third period. Mark Stone would then get his second goal of the game, shorthanded goal just over 3 minutes into the frame. William Karlsson would then increase the lead to 6-0, assisted by Dorofeyev, roughly 9 minutes into that period. And then William Karlsson would get an even strength goal, assisted by Dorofeyev and Amadio. So 7-0 was the final score. With that victory, the Golden Knights are sitting at 11-0-1, which is absolutely absurd. And with the loss, the Avalanche are sitting at 7-3-0. As always, if you tune into this channel and you like this kind of content and you're new, please feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative at the same time. And as always, take care.